So thank you. I'm very conscious that I am kind of between most people in this room and heading off home. So hopefully we'll be able to share some things with you that are useful. I suspect a lot of what I'll talk about today will build on themes of lots of conversations that we've had throughout the event in terms of financial well-being, the impact it has, and why we think it's an important and vital thing to look at for our colleagues. But what I'll do is I'll talk to you about what financial well-being has meant for us in YBS, Yorkshire Building Society, and why it is really very much a key part of our people plan and our business strategy, in all honesty. So I'll tell you a little bit about Yorkshire Building Society in a minute, but Yorkshire Building Society, fundamentally, we say we're on the tin. We are about a financial services company. We work for our members, and the core piece around us is around how we deliver what we call real help for real life. And real help for real life in our context is around helping people save and create financial security for the future and helping people afford their own homes. Very simple, those two things, that's what we're about. So when you think about that, it kind of just makes sense that when we look at things like financial well-being, that it's kind of something that we would think about for our colleagues, because it's what we put out for our members and into the wider community. We also had some other things that made it really pertinent for us a couple of years ago when we really started thinking about the wellbeing space. We were going through a huge amount of organisational change, and it was the first time as an organisation we'd really done that. We were closing some branches, we were changing the shape of the organisation, and we had felt like we had a real responsibility to support our colleagues through that, and that really sparked the wellbeing agenda for us. And as a result, we looked a lot about resilience, we looked a lot about mental health, we looked a lot about physical health. But the other piece that comes through that is financial resilience and financial health, and how people can manage their own finances in the right way and be ready for change in their life and changing things that can't come along. So that was the other piece that flowed through. And then, absolutely, as everybody's talked about today, we know that that financial concerns and financial worries can be all-encompassing for people. And when that's on their mind and when that's what they're concerned about, it can affect their mental health. If it affects their mental health, then it affects their productivity. And the thing about doing financial services, we don't make a thing. We don't make a cake or a product or this thing that somebody comes to buy. We create services and offerings, but fundamentally what we really produce and sell or give to our members is the service of our people. Our colleagues genuinely are the heart of what we do. It's why we have and maintain a really strong branch footprint. We are still in the high street, and it's because what matters to our customers, to our members, is the relationship and the experience they have when they come and visit our branches and speak to our colleagues. So if that's what you're selling, if that's what you're about, it kind of makes sense that you protect that, because what you're protecting there from a mental health perspective is exactly that service that flows through. So to give you a little bit more background about us, so there were three things we kind of had in our mind when we started thinking about financial well-being. Social context, again, we've spoken a lot about that today. We know that finances are continuing to be a challenge for individuals. Low interest rates, reduced wage growth, inflation, lots of challenges happening out there. Colleagues are feeling the impact of that, and it impacts them in all aspects of life. And what happens outside of YBS happens to colleagues within YBS. So that was something that we were very aware of. Our core purpose as a building society is really important. So the history of YBS, we've been around for 150 odd years. We were created in Huddersfield by a group of individuals that came together, probably in a pub one day, and talked about actually how could they come together to enable each other to access life's choices. For them then, it was actually how do we band our money together to enable each of us in turn to buy a house. And the reason buying a property was important to them was that you had to buy a property to be able to vote. So the background to YBS and many building societies is around how do you create that opportunity and that control and that say in your future. And it's not lost on us that when you think about financial inclusion, for example, that there's parallels there in terms of enabling people within the society and outside of it to have some of that control. And you might have seen, certainly it's on LinkedIn, it's been in the local papers up in Yorkshire, Our CEO, Mike Rainier, is out there actively talking about what are the things that are important to YBS right now. And it is about getting the nation saving, and it is about helping people to afford their own home. Those things still flow through. And we're very conscious that we're privileged enough to be looking after £29 billion of our members' money, which is all about how we help people do that well. So that kind of very neatly takes you to your commitment to our colleagues, members and regulators. Stats externally talk about, in 2018, I think it was 32% of people had less than £500 in savings. They could not really withstand any financial shock. I think it's 7 million people out there don't have any savings at all. And we've made a very visible and open commitment that one of the things that we want to do over the next, I think it's 3 years, is get to at least 1.5, might be 1.7, the number tweaks a bit, but it's a lot, of that 7 million who aren't saving. That is what YBS is seeking to do, and we'll do that through lots of different ways, in terms of lobbying government about different aspects, about getting awareness out there, but that's what we're about, and that commitment flows through to our members and through to our colleagues. So you might expect that if you're talking about a financial services organisation that's pretty strong, pretty in a good place, that actually this maybe wouldn't be as much of an issue for us. And if you look at the stats, the traditional stats you look at, you'd say, hang on, what's the problem? We have, on the face of it, we have a really strong benefits offering for our colleagues. More than most people are in a private medical plan. Everyone has access to a health cash plan and they use it. They use it a lot. We work really hard to make sure our colleagues are paid well in the market. We have pay awards each year. They've not been subject to things like pay freezes. We have a bonus award that pretty much pays out every year. In terms of pension, 95% of our colleagues save into a pensions plan. Just over half of it save more than the average. We have colleague products out there which help folk in terms of enhanced interest rates when it comes to saving. We've got a colleague mortgage product, which isn't brilliant now because of interest rates externally, but we've got all of those things in place. Life cover at 6 times salary. So on the face of it, you'd look at that and go, we're in a pretty good place. Our colleagues should be pretty sorted when it comes to that. But then we went out and asked them, and we saw quite a different picture. So we went out in 2017 and we spoke to about 1,000 colleagues. Now we have the same challenge as everyone else, and it's even harder in financial services. One of the key things about operating and having a role in this type of environment is your financial integrity. So getting people to talk about financial concerns and their worries is really hard. And we genuinely thought that was going to be the biggest thing to overcome. We did some work where we, I think it talked about, I can't remember if it says it in here, mental health. We'd done a whole load of stuff on mental health the year before, and colleagues were willing to talk about that, really quite comfortable doing that. But we found that nearly 100%, 98% of colleagues would not talk about their financial difficulties if they were facing them. And it really brought to home that kind of taboo that sits in that space. And there's a few numbers we didn't like when we saw them. Nearly 30% of colleagues say they can't afford to pay more than the minimum contribution into our pension scheme. That's 3% of salary. If you pay up to 5%, there's another 11% sat there waiting for you from the society. And a lot of people, a third of the colleagues were saying, can't access that. Nearly 40% had less than £500 in savings. 14% had none at all. 2/3 of colleagues didn't know how much they need for their retirement, if they were on track. And quite frankly, when you've got individuals saying, I can't afford it anyway, it felt like it was out of reach for them. The number that, besides the 98%, which is very uncomfortable, the other one was 1 in 10 colleagues. 1 in 10 colleagues say they regularly lose sleep over money worries. So 1 in 10 colleagues is feeling anxiety, is feeling stress, is feeling uncomfortable because of their financial situation. As soon as you see that, you can't ignore it, and we didn't want to ignore it. And it does flow through. We track our absence rates. Now, our absence rates aren't particularly high, but we track what sits behind it, and we track the piece around the proportion that's mental health related and not. Nearly 1/3 is mental health related. Again, not unusual in the financial services sector. 75% of that is not work related. So 75% of that is something that's happening outside of work at least. And again, there's a good chance that some of this might be contributing to it. So where did that take us to? So we started to think about, okay, so what does financial wellbeing mean for YBS? So now we know this, we need to do something. We're like loads of organisations. A big thing we have to work on is being financially sustainable, and we have to do that for our colleagues and for our members. So we didn't have piles of money to throw into this. And actually, a lot of our stats were saying that from a pay and a benefits perspective, we were pretty good. So actually, we're not sure if that would have really solved the problem. Sure, colleagues would have liked it, but it probably may not have solved an issue. So we really wanted to think about what did financial wellbeing mean for us. And for us, there was almost like a foundational point and then a piece that you built on. And the security was the foundational point. And we talked about putting it into 3 buckets. One was about making the most of your money. One was affording the expected and enjoying life. And the third one was about being ready for the future. So from a security perspective, it was literally getting control. You know, we talk a lot about, there was a lady that we were just talking to, she talked about the 7 kind of key elements of financial wellbeing. And I can't profess to remember all 7 off the top of my head, but the first one was budgeting and planning. And actually, if we could help colleagues budget and plan and get in control of their day-to-day, month-to-month savings, that could help them build on that. That meant that we could help them get to a point where they could save little and often and have means to pay an expected bill. And then hopefully they could then start to think about actually what are the basics they need to achieve through retirement. So the security bit was, how did we help colleagues get to a point where there was a basic minimum for them? And then once we'd done that, how did we build on that? So that's where freedom of choice came in. Budget well to afford extras, financial freedom to enjoy life, and then being on track to enjoy your retirement. So that's it. That's the structure that we came up with and said it makes sense, it feels relevant. How do we make that happen? So our approach has been around 3 key elements, and again, very similar to what a lot of people have spoken about today. The first one was education. So you might have colleagues who absolutely know what an instant access saver looks like. They might know how an ISA works. They might know a lot of this stuff. But actually, if some of those fundamental skills about planning and budgeting they don't have, how do we help them do that? The second one was ease of access. So we kind of went with a layering approach. If you got people educated and they understood what they needed to do, ease of access was saying, I've created the energy, you believe it's doable, okay, so how can we help you do something? And that might be about accessing products, accessing easy ways to save. How do we help you make that first step? And then the final one was, what do we do when things go wrong? And we consciously started with education to access to when you're struggling, because often you go straight to the struggling point, but we wanted to build it in a different way and help colleagues feel that sense of control. So, first campaign was all about taking control. So what did we look at here? We looked at, the first thing we wanted to do was get people talking about it. Because if we said it's the biggest taboo, it just really wasn't something that folk either wanted to talk about or face into it. So we started doing a lot of work around real life stories. And in a minute, I'll show you one of the videos we did. The key thing we did in there, and it was a bit of a fluke, and it has been a brilliant thing for us, was that we got one of our senior leaders, one of our chief risk officer actually did that and participated and talked about his history. So we did a piece around real life stories. We then did a piece around creating tools that line managers could access in terms of finances on an online hub. That was budgeting tools. That was things around helping them access things like step change, money advice service. And then we did a piece around support for line managers. So while line managers we were starting the conversation, how do line managers have it? How do they receive the concerns from their colleagues? And then we talk about promo items to raise awareness. It was just getting people comfortable to talk about it. So I'll share with you the video that we created, if this works.
So I wasn't really aware of the financial situation I was getting myself into. I'll be honest, I was sort of going into an ATM and just taking money out, and if it allowed me, I was off out that night. So I wasn't really aware of the situation that I was getting myself into.
So I kind of felt okay. You know, I had a car, I had a place to live, I had food on the table, all of those kind of nice things. but I hadn't, probably until that point, I'd not recognised just how fragile it was, and if a decent-sized bill came in, I would start to struggle fairly quickly.
I'd probably done something that lots of us do, and I'd done it kind of over a sustained period of time, which was every month I was being paid, I was doing great things with my friends, but every month I was kind of probably just spending that little bit more than was coming in.
So I'm really conscious of how much I was spending on a lunchtime by going getting a sandwich, getting soup from Pret, and then you also, you don't just get the soup or the sandwich, you get something else, and by the time you think, oh, I've had a bad day, I'll get a coffee, and you realise that you've spent a stupid amount just on getting through the day.
And if you don't face the facts, you're just going to continue to get into a worse situation. So it is scary, but the be-all and end-all is just to kind of wake up and realise the situation and take that control. And once you get control, you'll feel so much better.
There will generally be a way that you can get some control and move out of it. And just start to do things. Small steps will get you there.
The worst thing you can do is ignore it. And the best thing you can do is, even if it's painful, understand where all your money is, where all your debt is, where it's all going, and start to just take some control.
So hopefully that gives you a sense of how we started the conversation. I'm conscious of time and I'm going over, so I'll go through the next slides quite quickly and just give you a sense of the kind of things that we've done. So what have we done? So we did the whole piece around education, starting the conversation going. We then went into getting into a savings habit. How would we do that? We've also partnered with Salary Finance. They've helped us in terms of some of the tools to help colleagues save. Great thing we've done with that is that they actually either take a salary finance loan, or if they go into savings, they save into a YBS account. They can do it all online, and it allows them to do that direct from salary. Idea being, if you've got in financial trouble, take a loan, get yourself out of it, create a savings habit, then convert it into savings and keep going. And that was the idea. We've issued more real life stories, just kept the conversation going. We worked with another organisation to build a calculator, small change, big savings, all about how you converted those coffees that Emma talked about into real money that you could do something with and build it forward. We also did things around, the biggest thing was access. So we did pop-up branches. So we went to our head office sites, and actually we created for a day a YBS branch in there, and folk could open savings account, make mortgage appointments, just start to get some of that financial education. And then we did a whole host of stuff around pensions and targeted retirement planning messages. The final piece for us is around affording and coping with the unexpected. This is probably the most recent one for us. We did it just before Christmas. Went with the view that actually that's a time when it does get quite challenging for individuals. And again, it was about reinforcing some of the messages that we've already put out there and helping people have conversations around how they budget and plan for that time of year. And that's where we really did bring out the things like EAP, step change, where do you go for support when things don't go quite well. So in terms of we created a culture of financial wellbeing, I think we have. We've started the conversation. It's one of those things, you get some great things back. The lady who you saw in the video who talked about her own situation, someone from her team came to her because they saw that, talked to her about the trouble they were having. She helped them. She helped them get into a good place. Stories like that are really heartwarming. We've done other things around, we've gone through loads of organisation change. Colleagues are coming to us saying, I've got a staff mortgage, or I've just taken a fixed rate out. I believe I'm about to be put at risk. I'm really worried. What do I do? So we've created products at times to help people that are in that scenario, just using and leveraging the things that we can do that are unique to us as a building society. In terms of next steps for us, we are doing more. We're working with another organisation about creating financial first aiders within the organisation, building what competence looks like, and we're starting to see how that flows through in terms of impact. It's early days. We've seen some slight changes in terms of the data from colleagues that I shared with you at the beginning, but hopefully it gives you a sense of what you can do in a year, and with not a huge amount of investment, but really just getting the conversation going. Thank you.